Hey, welcome to Crossroads. Former President Donald Trump is standing trial, and if you have trouble telling which case is which, well, you're not alone because, frankly, a lot of people are having trouble right now keeping track of the Trump charges. There were so many of them, but I wanted to go over these and kind of give an update on where they're at. Former President Donald Trump, as you're aware, he's faced waves of criminal charges. This is unprecedented for a former president or for like a major candidate leading up to a 2024 election. The cases for this were initially framed as being detrimental to any chance Trump's ever going to become president ever again. But it now appears that that may have changed. They did not have the effect that they thought they would. So what is the state of each charge? Where are things actually at? Are the charges helping Trump or are they harming him for 2024? Here to speak with us about this is Kash Patel. He's the former Department of Defense Chief of Staff, and he's former deputy assistant to President Trump. So, Kash, welcome to Crossroads.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, Kash, some pundits have suggested the only case that looks like it can get a verdict before the 2024 elections is the Stormy Daniels one. Maybe not what they were expecting, but what's your take on that? Do you think that really is maybe the only one that has a chance before the elections?
Yeah, look, I'll put my former hats on as a former federal public defender and national security prosecutor who tried 60 criminal trials to verdict in state and federal courts. So that's quite a lot of number of cases and quite a lot of juries I had to deal with and judges. What we see here, and we can talk about the politics of it later if you want, but the legality is pretty simple. A prosecution has an ethical duty to bring a case based on facts that meet the law. And if there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you take it to a grand jury and charge. It's really simple. And then the defendant, conversely, has an equally important constitutional right of due process, rights to exculpatory evidence, rights to witnesses, rights to cross-examination, etc. If the rules are violated on either side, they're done so in a punitive fashion because the Constitution demands that prosecutors are held to the highest regards, but due process is never minimized in any shape, way, or form. And what we see here in the Bragg case is that the history speaks for itself. The United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York refused to charge Donald Trump with this set of facts and Michael Cohen as a witness. The Department of Justice refused to charge Michael Cohen on this set of facts and witnesses. This district attorney's office, in fact, refused to charge Donald Trump with Michael Cohen as a central witness based on the facts they had, because it's been proven that Michael Cohen's a liar. Now, that's all to say that you could put on a liar for days and days and days and days and days, but ultimately you got to get to a verdict. And it looks like this is going to be the last witness for the prosecution. There's a couple of legal things that have to happen in between, and maybe the defense puts on a case and then a day or two of legal motions, but we're going to get a verdict one way or the other. We also could get a hung jury. And while that technically doesn't qualify as a verdict, it is an end result of the case.
There was a big thing that came out recently. So Bill Maher, HBO TV host, he contradicted the Stormy Daniels testimony. And, he interviewed Stormy before, and then he showed a clip of what she said previously and what she's saying now. And it's interesting because she made it clear that in her own words, it was not a Me Too thing. And she's saying otherwise. Let me show the audience the clip real quick, and then I want to hear your take on it.
Okay, but you say it's not a Me Too case.
It is not a Me Too case. I mean, I wasn't assaulted. I wasn't attacked or raped or coerced or blackmailed. They tried to shove me in the Me Too box to further their own agenda. And first of all, I didn't want any part of that because it's not the truth, and I'm not a victim in that regard.
That's not what she's saying now. She's talking about he was bigger and blocking the way. It's all the Me Too buzzwords. She said there was a power imbalance of power, for sure. My hands were shaking so hard. She said she blacked out.
Kash, I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, normally I would think that if you contradict a previous statement, it would, and I don't know if that would get the case thrown out normally or what happens. I mean, what's the normal process for something like this?
Simple. An ethical prosecutor would never bring the case. You need a witness, usually in a prosecution of a case, depending on the crime, but this style of crime, you need a witness, Michael Cohen. You also need a victim. And in this instance, they've quasi-portrayed Stormy Daniels as the victim, even though there are no actual victims to the crime charged. But it looks good in front of a jury. But if both of those individuals as witnesses and victims have been caught lying multiple times under oath to Congress, to the media, to courts of law, to prosecutors, this should never have gone forward. And if you just take Stormy Daniels at her own words, she's a victim. No, I'm not a victim. Nothing happened. Everything was fine. And then also the defense, I think, has put this up a couple times during the testimony. She wrote a letter through her counsel in 2017 or whatever it was, 15, I can't remember the date, where she said there was never President Trump. So if there was no affair, whether it was consensual or not, it's factually and legally impossible for you to have been sexually harassed in any way, shape, or form. And now Alvin Bragg puts you on the witness stand to say, I was just kidding. I lied in my letter. My lawyer lied for me. And I was dishonest in the media, but please believe me now.
Yeah, she actually said that multiple times. It was like year after year for a while. Yeah. You mentioned a few times that it's important to have a victim if you want to bring a charge, and I know Trump's been saying that. He was saying that as well on the the undervaluing of the Mar-a-Lago case, that it was a case with no victim. There was no aggrieved party. I mean, help me understand that, because it seems that some of these cases are lacking a victim, and they're going forward regardless. I mean, does that normally not happen?
It never happens. It's against the law. It's against your constitutional oath as a prosecutor. The crimes that have victims, like the crimes that they are charging Donald Trump with, require under the law that there actually be a victim. And as you highlighted in the civil case in New York, there literally was no financial fraud victim. So there couldn't have been financial fraud. Put that aside. Let's go to this case here at hand in New York, where let's remind your audience real quick how this is a two-tier system of justice. Hillary Clinton, back in 2016, utilized campaign finance dollars to go out and pay for Christopher Steele's dirty dossier and hid those campaign finance dollar utilization as a legal expenditure. That's an actual crime with the victim. The FEC and the DOJ say that's a crime. She was never prosecuted because the same people that wanted to politically weaponize DOJ and FBI are now a part of the process with the Donald Trump case, and they gave her a pass. But instead of doing the same to Donald Trump, who, by the way, is actually on better factual footing because he used his own money for an actual legal expense, and the DOJ and FEC have said in writing that there is no crime that Donald Trump committed, ergo no victim, hence no charges. This district attorney took it upon himself after combining forces with the DOJ. Remember, they sent their number 3 big shot prosecutor down to the district attorney's office to say, we must bring these charges. We will find a victim. We will make up the facts. We will make up a witness. And this is what happens when you literally make up a case that is unconstitutional. Your star witness is Michael Cohen, and your star victim is Stormy Daniels. And you could not have picked 2 worse people to fit either of those roles.
Yeah, well, on another note alongside this, and I want to hear what your take is. People are calling this, of course, a hush money case, and they're talking about a non-disclosure agreement. I mean, that's what it's really about. Normally, that's like a misdemeanor. They elevated a misdemeanor to like 24 felonies, which is a whole other issue. And one that was past the statute of limitations as well. But you talked about using campaign finance money for this type of stuff, and Trump used his own money. This is where I think the story is getting lost in a lot of people. I mean, as an investigative journalist, where I have to investigate finances and lawsuits and stuff like that, it's a part of my work. I understand that just because somebody maybe signed an NDA or had a hush money thing doesn't mean they actually did anything. Because when you're dealing with big corporations or major names, I'm not accusing Stormy of this, but I know that there's a really corrupt element behind it where typically, if someone just accuses a major corporation of a crime, it's cheaper for them to just pay him off. And even a lot of the insurance houses, they have legal insurance. They just pay people. And there's dirty people who just take advantage of that. And so, I mean, on the note of the quote-unquote hush money and the NDA, like, how does that tie into Trump? I mean, because it sounds like there's a lot of murky water in terms of how this is being framed, where on one side they're saying that Trump never even knew about it. I know Avenatti is even coming out and criticizing Cohen and Stormy on this. I mean, how do I make sense of this, Cash? Because it's getting to the point where it's so convoluted it's hard to make sense of.
Right. I think you have to rewind the tape and just look at the facts and the law. This case has nothing to do with hush and nothing to do with money. It is not a hush money case. That's what the mainstream media wants you to call it because it sounds licentious. Oh, wow, what hush money? Who's getting paid off? Where was the deal under the table? Who broke the law where? It already puts Donald Trump on a negative footing in terms of constitutional due process, but that's the way they wanted it framed, and it sounds sexy. Now, in terms of the law and the facts, the reason it's not a hush money case is because, don't take my word for it, don't even take Stormy Daniels' word for it, and don't even take Michael Cohen's word for it. How about Bob Costello, Michael Cohen's lawyer, who testified to the Weaponization Subcommittee in Congress, I think this week, under oath, literally said that when Bob Costello, was representing Michael Cohen for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and Bob Costello, walked Michael Cohen into the United States District Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice, he advised his client, Michael Cohen, to tell the truth and everything will work out. And what did Michael Cohen tell prosecutors per Bob Costello's testimony? I have absolutely nothing on Donald Trump. I have absolutely nothing on Donald Trump. That statement was made 10 times by Bob Costello. And he said Michael Cohen told the FBI the same exact thing in his presence. Obviously, Bob Costello was Michael Cohen's lawyer, and he would know that. So if you take that singular fact alone, there is no hush money. There is no deal. And Michael Cohen, if you take his testimony from the witness stand and believe even a piece of what he says, he has already admitted he paid Stormy Daniels himself. He did it in the hopes of getting in the good graces of Donald Trump. That's an action and an intent that Michael Cohen took that Donald Trump had no participation in. So Donald Trump could not have been leveraging or conducting a quid pro quo or saying, here's a hush money deal. I need you to go pay this person. Michael Cohen has admitted that didn't happen. Michael Cohen's lawyer has admitted under oath now that Michael Cohen, when he spoke to federal agents, told him, I have absolutely no information on this case for you. That's why DOJ never charged him.
Yeah, I mean, the whole case seems to have issues like this. You know, there was something else I want to ask you about. A paralegal just testified that Alvin Bragg's team, the prosecutor, had deleted 3 pages of phone records between Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, and they didn't even tell Trump's legal team. I know there's some really serious accusations around saying, oh, that's a crime to delete evidence. I mean, what is the actual impact of that? What is the actual significance of that?
You know, this is monumental. And this is where I ask, where are all my former public defender colleagues? Where's the ACLU? No, seriously, where are all the raging liberals who say the Constitution should be applied to all equally? I stood for that in court for years. And the worst crime you can commit as a prosecutor, literally the worst crime, there's actually 2, lying to a judge and deleting or withholding evidence. They're on par with each other. They are both crimes. They're both actual felonies, punishable by more than 1 year in prison.
So you're saying Alvin Bragg committed a crime by doing that, if it's true?
Every one of his prosecutors that participated in the deletion of evidence, not only did they delete it, they could have said, hey, we were looking through 1 gigabyte of information. We sent it out to a company to help us source it. And judge, by accident, they deleted X, Y, and Z, not our fault. And been upfront about it, right? Stuff like that happens. It's not ideal, but it happens. What they did here was they themselves, Bragg, deleted it. They withheld it from the court. They withheld it from Donald Trump, violating his constitutional due process rights. And then they lied about it because when you know something to be the truth and you don't disclose it, that's a lie, especially before a judicial officer. So now they have committed multiple crimes. This judge, of course, isn't going to do anything about it. But Donald Trump's attorneys, I think, are taking the right approach, that they are filing motions and calling for dismissal of these charges based on the deletion of records. There is no worse conduct a prosecutor can do than delete and withhold evidence from the defendant, especially when the defendant, in this case, Donald Trump, has a right to it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other stuff, too. So the judge in the Manhattan case is threatening to throw Trump in jail if he violates the gag order. One more time, folks, we'll be talking more about this after a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Hey, welcome back, and Kash Patel again. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so we're having an interesting discussion. I want to get into the threat to throw Trump in jail for violating a gag order, which is still hanging over his head. Kash, I'm just reading the comments. Some people are asking what they can do about this, because I think a lot of people, of course, support Trump for president, mainly the conservatives, and they're concerned. They're concerned that the justice system is not working the way it should, as you have pointed out, and they're wondering what they can do. Is there anything people can do on a civil level or like on a personal level?
Absolutely. Look, we'll put aside the fact that the gag order is unconstitutional and violates Donald Trump's First Amendment free speech rights. He's the only person who is not allowed to talk about the case, and he's the defendant in the case. I've literally never heard of that in my entire career as a prosecutor or a public defender. But what other people can do is raise awareness to it. And I think that's what Donald Trump is leading the effort in. By going out there every day and talking to the media and reading what the media printed about the gag order and reading about what other commentators in the media are writing about the gag order and legal experts, I think what you're seeing is a massive civics lesson for America to say, and look, most Americans don't have to be constitutional experts, nor should they. They've got lives to live and families to take care of. But this is an important lesson because they're saying if they're going to silence Donald Trump, a presidential candidate for the United States of America, whether I agree with him or not, what happens if they do it to me or my neighborhood or my family or my community? So I think every person that talks about it raises the awareness. And now it's caught on such fire that even the fake news media is saying, okay, actually, this is one step too far. And when they admit that, you've rung the bell. And I think that's what Donald Trump has done in a brilliant fashion, because really what he should be able to do every day, and we did this with defense counsel on defendants all the time, walk out and talk to the media. Tell them everything that happened. Give them your opinion. That is your constitutional right to free speech that no judge in America can truncate. But this one did.
Yeah, one of our viewers is asking if there's anything they can do to get maybe elected representatives to react to this. Is there anything that can be done from that level?
I think you're going to see that, and I think you've seen some of that. There have been some political representatives from Congress, like Byron Donalds and Corey Mills were there in the courthouse with President Trump the other day, voicing their opinion to the media. Maybe some more folks will go down there. I think you can call your congressional offices and senators and say, hey, I want you to speak on this. And enough people do, they probably will. I don't think you're going to get maybe the select radical few in Congress to say that this gag order is actually constitutional. I mean, just look at it this way. If Joe Biden were on trial for sexual misconduct against Tara Reade, and the judge told Joe Biden, you can't go out there and talk about your case, what would the mainstream media's response be?
Yeah, you wouldn't hear the end of it.
Right.
On that note too, again, as we were discussing, the judge in the Manhattan case, he's threatening to throw Trump in jail if he violates the gag order again. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's saying Trump has violated the gag order like 10 times. I can understand from one point, if you're a judge and there's nothing you can do to maintain order, maybe you'd have to take that step. But I was looking at the actual context of what he's accusing Trump of. And in some of the actual transcripts, Trump is being accused of the judge of contempt for looking down or looking away, like his body language stuff. I can understand the tweets maybe, but like body language, it seems bizarre to me. But I want to ask you, Kash, is it even possible to throw a former president in jail? Like, how does that even happen? Because they have Secret Service detail and, who knows what else. I mean,
look, the Secret Service is professionals. They perform all sorts of logistical lifts that you couldn't think possible. But President Trump should never be put in prison or jail, especially not for contempt or any of these trumped up charges from the Biden administration. But I think this judge, what he is doing is continuing the unethical conduct that shows why he should not be presiding over this case. As you pointed out, as an investigative journalist who actually looked at the contempt orders and the underlying documentation, there is no basis for contempt. But what does it do? It gives him the mainstream media, the headline, Donald Trump charged with contempt. Donald Trump, found held liable for contempt 10 different times, so they can run with that narrative. It allows his daughter to go out and continue to raise money to the tune of millions, which she's already admitted to through the company which she's the CEO of,
right.
and raises money for the likes of
the judge's daughter, right?
The judge's daughter, excuse me. And so it gives them the headlines that they need. And this judge is just feeding more ammunition into that machine. This judge will not put Donald Trump in jail. This judge will not imprison Donald Trump for any of these contempt violations, because this judge knows the second he does that, Donald Trump has the immediate right to appeal that. Unlike the rest of the case, once you issue an incarcerative sentence, the appeals issue becomes immediate. And the Court of Appeals, even as crazy as New York is, will come back and say, not only can you not hold him in contempt because these gag orders are unconstitutional, but you need to immediately release him. And it will delay his trial. And the judge sees that the political headwinds are going against him in every single point of this case. And so not only is it unconstitutional, it shouldn't happen. And the Secret Service should never have to do it.
Well, that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought that I hadn't thought about that element, that when they go to appeal, Trump's probably going to bring up all the conflicts of interest of the judge, and it's going to bring the integrity of that entire case on the table. Do you think that's what would happen were they to appeal it on that?
I think everything's fair game when the client you are representing has had his civil liberties removed, meaning they've put him in prison or jail. And so once that happens, it triggers a whole set of different constitutional protections. It's not like you're saying, hey, judge, I fined him $1 million. We'll get to this later. We can stay the order. No big deal. It's a totally different scenario. Judge, my client's physically in jail for something that is completely unconstitutional. And not only do they get the state court involved, right? This is a federal issue. So they can take this matter to the federal court because constitutional due process stems from the Constitution, which is a federal matter. A state court has a right to adjudicate state issues. So now you're taking this and saying, wait a second, we know the New York system might be rigged, but what if we take this to federal court and a federal judge trounces the gag order, the judge, the conflicts of interest? I mean, it could be a complete and total annihilation of this case by a judge, which would be the last thing the Democrats and Biden want.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of the Democrats and Biden, I think the original calculation based on polling, based on the media, and even based on some public statements by officials, they seem to have thought that if they could get a guilty verdict against Trump, they're going to win a few different points on the polls. And what I've been saying repeatedly is that, well, context is important. People, if I take a poll and they say, hey, if this guy's a criminal, would you vote for him? I might say no. But if I think that he's been unjustly incriminated, if I think that the trial itself was unjust, it's not like a purely black and white thing for me. The context is important. And so I feel like they're trying so hard to get a guilty verdict that they're ignoring the process. And it looks like it's helping Trump instead of harming him, which I think they originally thought it would harm him. I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, how do you see the impact of these cases on the Trump campaign? Has it helped Trump or has it hurt him?
I mean, I think you're seeing Americans respond resoundingly in one direction, that it helps him for the reasons you pointed out. It's not a popularity contest. It's not a do I like or dislike Donald Trump. It's a question of, do I want to live in a constitutional republic where everyone has due process rights? Or do I want to live in a weaponized system of justice where the two-tier system of justice is the deep state's weapon of choice for its political opponents? It's not a right-wing conspiracy anymore. And every single one of these cases, Georgia, New York, Florida, Washington, D.C., has its own different version of the Biden fingerprints when it comes to the unlawful prosecution of Donald Trump. It's one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's been well documented on Epoch, brilliantly so. And the readers and audience that you have are going out to their communities and saying, wait a second, those guys weren't lying about Russiagate was a rigged job. Those guys weren't lying about the 51 intel letter. Those guys weren't lying when they said Joe Biden actually possessed classified documents, unlike President Trump. The system has been repeatedly stacked against them, but the mainstream media has done the bidding of those very deep state operatives to say, oh, those guys over there are just lying. So I think what Donald Trump does cleverly every time and every day he's in front of the podium, in front of one of these cases, is he educates more and more Americans. And he says, this is happening to me right now, but they're actually coming after you, because the FBI has already admitted to going after parents at school board meetings. The FBI has already admitted to going after Catholics and calling them domestic terrorists. That's what they've admitted to so far. By the way, if you were associated with January 6th in any way, the FBI has labeled you a domestic terrorist. As a former terrorism prosecutor who actually manhunted terrorists, that is one of the most offensive things I've ever heard. But those types of political labels are what America is turning off and tuning out of, thanks to the Biden administration.
Yeah, interesting comment from one of our viewers. It's James GT289. It says, more free media coverage and increased anti-leftist agenda sentiment is always beneficial. I've been thinking about this as well. I kind of feel like in the absence of conservatives trying to kind of go out and fight, that the left is actually turning on itself right now. This was my feeling from the get-go, is that you have a lot of people who just want to fight, and they're trained to always look for something wrong to rally against and protest against. And I feel like they're kind of eating themselves right now, because the conservatives are not engaging against the far left anymore. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you see this as well happening?
Yeah, look, just turn on. I mean, if you really are bored, just turn on the mainstream media and you can watch the implosions, take itself on center stage at MSNBC or CNN. I mean, they're literally attacking each other. And now they're saying somehow the system is rigged by the conservatives and Donald Trump against them. I mean, it's once they start turning the guns on themselves, like you said they have done, we have achieved the mission point of truth. We have put out to the American people the information, and all the talking heads have left is to bark at each other. And so I think it helps Donald Trump's position, because no one over there is saying anything factual or legally accurate anymore, because there's nothing for them to say. We've blown through the hyperbole. Oh, Donald Trump, bad man, must prosecute. So I think when the leftist does that, it only helps Donald Trump even more, especially as the days go on.
Yeah, actually, some viewers are pointing to Trump's event just recently in New Jersey. And I mean, yeah, they said about 100,000 people showed up. Let's see, Mary Nason, you're saying the more they do to Trump, the more popular he becomes. Over 100,000 in New Jersey when Trump spoke. And Kash, when I was watching that event in New Jersey, my thought was this. I was like, Trump might not have held an event in Wildwood had he not been stuck in New York. And I was thinking about that Trump is being forced to campaign in New York City and in places that he might avoid because they're not really battleground states. And I was kind of reflecting on this. I was like, maybe in a weird way, this is more effective than him campaigning in battleground states. I mean, do you think him being in, what are normally solid blue states is beneficial? Or do you think it would be better if he was in, and he's doing Pennsylvania and stuff still, but do you think it's better off that he's in these states like New Jersey?
Well, I think the ultimate situation would be it's better off if Donald Trump weren't being unconstitutionally prosecuted, but we can't solve that situation in the immediate future. But I think what you pointed out is very politically astute. And I think it's backfiring on the left and the Democrats. Let's bury him in a courtroom in New York City, in the lion's den, where we own the media, where we own the corporations, where we own the empire, and we will swallow him up whole. That was their ethos. And he can't get out. Let's not have him in Wisconsin and Nevada and Georgia and elsewhere. But as you pointed out, what Donald Trump did brilliantly, I think, was you're going to put me here. I'm going to campaign from here every single day. Literally the entire world, the world, not even just America, is watching this trial. It is the biggest trial of the last 100 years, maybe ever. And we've never had media coverage like we do today. So every single outlet is looking at Donald Trump every time he walks out of the courtroom and says this constitutional system is broken. This gag order violates my due process. Michael Cohen's a liar. The system's rigged. Alvin Bragg deleted evidence. Joe Biden's lawyers airmailed themselves into this prosecution and lied to the world saying this is not for political vengeance. And so many other lines of truth are being unloaded into the media that I don't know that that type of megaphone could be even bought. And on top of that, as you said, President Trump's probably thinking, well, I'm here. Why don't I go to Wildwood, New Jersey and put New Jersey in play? And 100,000 people showed up, as you pointed out. So now I think the Democrats are like, wait a second. We used to have New York and New Jersey on lockdown for presidential elections. Now they're going to have to put money over there and campaign over there because of the flow of the media cycle from New York.
Wow, I didn't think of that last part, actually. The Democrats are going to have to fight over places they might have thought they had locked down. That's a great point, Kash. Also on another topic now, we have Special Counsel Jack Smith being accused of changing his story to the judge. And Kash and I are going to be talking more about this exclusively on EpicTV.com. So for all you in the audience, if you want to catch the rest of the episode, click the link below. And you'll be on your way to not only the rest of this episode, but also our hard-hitting documentaries, our movies, our news coverage, and of course, stuff that's not afraid to tell the truth. So let me show you a trailer for our latest documentary. This is Weapons of Mass Migration. And then we'll continue this episode exclusively on EpicTV.com.
An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop.
According to statistics, around 7.2 million illegal immigrants entered the United States under President Joe Biden alone. They have United Nations facilities here, and the people pushing this are leading people to their deaths.
To what extent is the United Nations facilitating the border crisis?
They're throwing rocks!
They're being overridden by international powers.
We are not authorized to talk.
It is a humanitarian business now.
And they said, oh yeah, these are the debit cards. We're giving these debit cards to the immigrants.
Why all the cloak and dagger? Why are we being so stealthy about this?
Some of these people have gone on record and publicly talked about this. People close to Barack Obama.
It puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters.
I've been researching, of course, what's happening, but I want to know why it's happening.
We'll see chaos on a global scale until America is extinguished and the power shifts completely to the east.